Hello, my name is Neil O'Toole, and I'd like to welcome you to this podcast, which is the latest in a series of podcasts by the Younger Parkinson's Alliance. Our vision is to create a world where the aspirations, challenges facing younger people with Parkinson's and their families are understood, respected, supported, enabling them to lead active and fulfilling lives. This podcast today is about exercise. I'm joined on today's panel by Jacob Brouwers, who's a neurophysiotherapist, my Parkinson's colleagues, Sarah, Keith and Anthony. Given that the subject of this podcast is exercise, we'd like to make clear at the outset that the contents of this podcast reflect the views of a number of individuals with Parkinson's. It should not be construed as advice. Parkinson's is a complex condition, and prior to commencing any exercise program, listeners are advised to seek professional advice and guidance. Sarah, could you give us a brief introduction about yourself?
Hello, my name is Sarah Webb. I was diagnosed 10 years ago at the age of 39. I had DBS 3.5 years ago. I live in Kingston and I used to play a lot of tennis.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Keith Black. I was diagnosed in 2011 when I was 57. I live in Farnham, Surrey. I was an IT professional services guy. I'm now retired.
Thank you. Welcome, Keith. Anthony, over to yourself. Could you give us a brief introduction about yourself?
Hi, I'm Anthony. I was diagnosed 5 years ago at the age of 42. I loved my sport. I've loved sport throughout my life and try and continue to play it as much as I possibly can. And I've got still work a full-time job and a very young family of two daughters who were 12 and 10.
Thank you. You're all very welcome. Okay, if I can come to you first, Jaco. I think we're all aware that exercise is good for everybody, whether they've got Parkinson's or not. Perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about, from a scientific point of view, why exercise is good for people, and then more specifically, why it's of benefit, particularly to people with Parkinson's.
Yeah, exercise is of course good for all people. It helps them to feel better, and it helps people to improve their overall health. Exercise challenges your body to be a little bit more flexible, to produce a bit more energy. Your muscles will remain more flexible if you keep using them. Your joints will become stiff if you don't move around. There's also the benefits of exercising that are more on a psychological level. Your body releases endorphins if you exercise, if you exercise hard enough, and they make you feel better. Your heart and your lungs and your vascular system needs to be challenged from time to time. If you stop exercising, then your heart and your vascular system start to deteriorate slightly. So there is this element of if you don't use it, you lose it. And for people with Parkinson's, there is the added benefit of needing to keep their ability to balance, their ability to produce certain movements to the fullest. And these things can be exercised, these things can be trained. And of course, if you stop moving in a certain way, then you're going to be less able to do that particular movement.
In your view, when should exercise be introduced as Parkinson's following diagnosis? And how should people go about that?
Exercise should be introduced as soon as possible after diagnosis. We know that people who are being diagnosed are already below the exercise tolerance of their peers. So there is this benefit of boosting people with their exercise tolerance. And of course, there is this neuroplasticity that some of the cells that are affected by Parkinson's, they will be able to be rehabilitated, so to speak, by pushing them a little bit harder, so they can start producing some more dopamine, or by getting some repair processes going on, just to keep them going for that little bit longer. And that is the mechanism that is believed in general, in layman's terms, so to speak, is the mechanism that that we all think that that exercise benefits people with Parkinson's. So as early as possible and as strenuous as possible, although people will have different tolerance levels. Some people will have been extremely fit and active in their previous exercise life, so to speak, and they will have different levels of exercise that they are tolerant to and that they might aspire to, and others might not have exercised at all, and they will need a different exercise routine to keep them motivated and to get them going. But in general, what we would aim for is for a lift in people's exercise. So they need to be doing more than they are doing today in order to get better. And that's the same with anything that you want to learn or that you want to improve, is that you have to work on it. So I would say that as soon as possible after diagnosis, people should be assessed on their abilities, their exercise tolerances, and would have a specific exercise prescription that is focused and targeted towards their goals, that is focused and targeted towards their symptoms and towards their lifestyle as well.
Could you just tell us a little bit about the different types of exercise that are available to people with Parkinson's and the potential benefits of each of them?
Yeah, exercise is, of course, for everybody specific. It's their personal choice. In general, people will need to do some exercises that they like to do. If the exercise is something that that gives you a good feeling, then you're more likely to continue with the exercise. So that's probably the first thing to acknowledge, is that you would need to find an exercise that you like to do. And that you'll be able to continue with. The other thing is that you'll need to exercise at a level that could be challenging you. Is that if you're, for instance, if you have an affinity to dancing, then dancing would be a good way of starting to exercise. But then that needs to be a strenuous exercise. That needs to be an exercise that's that little bit harder than that you can do at that point in time, in order to improve you and to challenge your brain. Now with exercise for the brain, it's a little bit more difficult. If you would compare, for instance, exercises for your brain with exercises for someone who has had a heart attack, has a cardiac condition, that person with the cardiac condition, you would expect them to be exercising with a heart rate monitor to make sure that they are working hard enough, and to make sure that they're making improvements to the heart physiology. And there's other measures as well that they might be using for that. But for people who have neurological conditions, we don't have those kind of measures. And what we have to make sure is that the brain or the neurological system is working hard enough to make those lasting changes, to improve its functionality and to improve its responsiveness. So we need to really target certain cells in the brain, and for that we will have to do a good assessment to see where people are failing in their skills, and then substitute that. It's really important to make sure that you're targeting where your goals are and that you target where your symptoms are. So cardiovascular exercise will give you some general benefit. Cardiovascular exercise is those kind of exercise that get you out of breath normally. And they are the exercises that will make you feel good, release of endorphins. They are the kind of exercises that improve your cardiovascular system. Your skin will probably be better at the end of it, because your circulation is a lot better. Your joints are going to be more flexible. Your muscles are going to be more flexible. But they are not necessarily the exercises that are going to target your brain. So a lot of people will have had this experience where they've been going on a long walk, and their mind has gone somewhere else. So they are the type of exercises that if you would go and do that exercise to switch off, then that isn't an exercise where you would switch your brain on. I think that would be obvious. So in order to train your brain, you would need to do something that is challenging for your brain, as well as that kind of cardiovascular movement element to it. We often find that people, when they're wanting to do high intensity exercise, they try and do something that gets them really out of puff, but is actually quite simple to do. So it needs to be challenging for your brain, and we call that layering the exercise. So you give someone an exercise to do a physical task, and then you layer another task on top of that, and that can be physical or cognitive. And that extra task is then there to challenge your brain to keep doing both of them, because none of us are actually good at multitasking. So it is a really neat way of challenging your brain to keep two tasks at the same time going.
That's very helpful, Jaco. Really, really practical as ever. Just to come to, I think, one point I wanted to raise, which is as people's conditions deteriorate, which is inevitable, unfortunately, with Parkinson's. It is a degenerative condition. What advice could you give to people who are as the stages of Parkinson's progress and exercise probably becomes more and more challenging for them?
Yeah, thank you for that question. When people deteriorate over time, it is important to adjust your exercise routine and to make it challenging, but not too challenging. We of course want to keep people safe. So if balance becomes too much of a problem, then we're going to need to adapt the exercises to a stage where it still is safe to keep doing that exercise. Of course, motivation is a different story. That when you're exercising and when you're living with a chronic condition, a condition that will get worse over time, it is going to be important that you keep your motivation going. And I think that the knowledge that the exercise is making a difference is probably the element that needs to be used as motivation. Often with people, even without Parkinson's, if they stop doing any exercise, they're not necessarily going to get better from that. So we all know that if I would stop doing my exercise routines, that in 3, 4, 5 weeks time, I should be expecting myself to be less fit. So if you're living with a chronic condition that is slowly getting worse, if you stop exercise, then you should really anticipate that you're going to get worse a lot quicker. And unfortunately, that means that you have to stay on top of it. You have to stay on top of your exercise, however hard that is. And we need to find other ways of keeping that motivation going and make sure that the exercises aren't too tough. So as soon as people start to struggle with an exercise beyond where it is really targeting their brain to work hard, we should be changing that exercise. And that my point that I made earlier about having exercises for the summer, exercises for the autumn, for the winter, and for the spring kind of addresses that seasonality, but also the ability to change exercises so you keep motivated and you keep the fun element in an exercise, despite the fact that you're less able to do the exercise.
Clearly, there are risks in going about an exercise program for the first time, or where you significantly step up the exercises you're doing. What advice would you give to people with Parkinson's on what they should be doing at that sort of stage of their program?
Every kind of exercise will bring with itself an element of risk that you're going to get hurt, that you're going to pull a muscle, or that you're going to do a movement that you haven't done for a long time. What you need to make sure is that you get yourself assessed by an exercise professional or by a physiotherapist like myself, who is experienced within Parkinson's, who's had additional training within the field of Parkinson's rehabilitation, and who can assess what exercises are going to be the most appropriate and at which level those exercises need to be done. And that's just to avoid any injuries, especially in the first stages when you're starting to exercise, that you haven't done for some time. Making sure that you're safe, making sure that you don't get hurt with those exercises is of the utmost importance. For anyone who's starting exercise to improve their condition, I would just say go for it. You know, whatever the exercise is that you want to do, whatever the physical activity is that you enjoy, try and find a safe way of doing that exercise, that physical activity, and then just go for it. Enjoy it. You know, really enjoy that exercise and enjoy that physical activity, and sticking with it, sticking with physical activity, not per se sticking with that exercise. It is the variation and alteration of different exercises that is going to keep you motivated. And do it with others. Do the exercise with others. Find buddies, find colleagues, find family members, and rope them into doing some exercise with you.
How about you, Anthony? You said you didn't have any specific exercise regime when you were first diagnosed. What have you done since, and what improvement in your symptoms have you seen?
I think one of the benefits of exercise for me in the outset was I realised that my medication was, the effectiveness of my medication was lengthened by exercising. So whereas I used to catch the bus to work, I'd get off a couple of stops earlier than I usually would, and I'd find that I wouldn't need to take my medicines in such a uniformed way. I could last maybe a half hour longer in the beginning. So that was a kind of light bulb moment for me that kind of reinforced the old adage that dopamine is released naturally into the brain with exercise for anybody, leave alone people with Parkinson's disease.
Yeah.
So I kind of used that as a bit of kind of knowledge and interpreted it positively, and then looked to adapt to different exercises like cycling, football, and anything really. I would try and walk somewhere rather than get the car if it was possible, of course, and if it was safe to do so. I don't know if anybody else kind of builds it into their daily life, because it hasn't got to be. I know Keith mentioned HIIT exercising, which is proven to be very effective, but my methodology is a little bit broader. I'll try and do something. It doesn't have to be anything, very heavy, as long as I keep myself moving in some capacity by replacing walking or maybe a little jog, and replacing it with getting a car or getting a bus somewhere, something like that.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I walk my kids to school every day. So with the dog, so I've actually I'm dealing with two things at the same time there. I'm walking the dog and I'm taking the kids to school, and they get an exercise before school as well. So then I don't have to take the dog for another walk later. So I feel as if I've done my day's worth then as well. But also,
men can't do that because that's classed as multitasking, Sarah.
I know, that's very true, actually. Yeah, very true.
What's interesting, though, is you don't need to do hours of exercise, a 30-minute walk or 10-minute walk. But if you can build like 30 minutes of exercise into your day around your coffee break, go and do a few, push-ups or whatever you're able to do. It really works for me, just building it into my day.
I recently severed my Achilles tendon playing football with Neil back in January, and I learned a little tip off the physiotherapist just to do little calf raises while the kettle's boiling.
Yes.
Or while I'm brushing my teeth. Or again, that's two tasks in one there, Sarah. So you'll have to teach me how to do that. But
I'm wondering how you can do press ups and brush your teeth at the same time. That sounds harsh.
Yeah, that's a bit advanced for me, Keith. But whilst you're in the shower, do some calf raises. Anything. Especially now we're all working from home. There shouldn't be any embarrassment doing it while you're out in the shops.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right.
We've done something down here called Pop In for Parkinson's, which we started up about 5 years ago. And it's funny because when everyone turns up for the evening session, we'll walk in all struggling, all with walking sticks, all trying to, everyone's freezing or having a bad day, all tired. And as soon as the music comes on, and it kind of distracts the brain. That's how it's the best way for me to describe it. And we'll get up moving again, and we feel like we're all young again, and we all have a great time because we don't realise that we're doing exercise because the music's so good as well. So we're all listening to the music, listening to the beat of the music helps as well. And in that respect, we all get a bit faster and we're able to move again. And it's, you come out of there and I feel like a new woman. Yeah. And I used to love dancing in any case. And I think Poppy for Parkinson's has saved me in that respect. It's given me something to do, something that I love, and dancing again.
Brilliant.
I concur with that, Sarah, because I won't admit to the kind of upbeat music I listen to, because Justin Timberlake's in there as well at some point, I think. But I think when I used to walk to work eventually with my headphones in, music was a great assistance to up in the pace a little bit, and it does do something to the brain. Music does, especially when you're exercising. So I'd agree totally with that.
Yeah, I think it just makes you feel good again, doesn't it? And it makes you feel young again, does it, Anthony? And you want to get out, and it makes you want to get moving again.
Well, I still am young.
Oh, of course you are, Anthony. Yes, sorry, I forgot that.
No, it's got something to do with the beat. I know there's some research into metronomic pulses to help people with Parkinson's steady their walk.
Very much so, I agree.
But I think for me, a bit of upbeat music with a quicker tempo certainly works and helps my coordination. Helps my step, my pace.
It's amazing, isn't it? It does, yeah.
It's a very complicated thing, the brain, but I'll take music helping it any day of the week.
Okay, thanks. Just another point I know has often come up in these discussions is sustaining exercise. Perhaps, you have a change in routine at work, or you go on holiday, or you just go through a period where you just struggle to get the motivation.
The key to sustaining it for me is not to beat yourself up about it if you can't do what you set out to do. I think Keith touched on it earlier, you only need to do half an hour here or half an hour there to get some real benefits with Parkinson's, as long as it's a decent exercise. So, if you don't do the full half hour, do 10 minutes throughout the day.
Yeah.
Just try and adapt. And that's the most difficult thing is obviously going from being able to do things to not being able to do things, and cope, and that coping mechanism and the adapting mechanism that you use. And I know it's easy to say, but I think especially the people that are maybe target driven, but don't beat yourself up about doing it, not completing what you set out to do. Maybe cut it down into smaller parts.
I think you also need to listen to your body as well. Like you're just saying, if you're having a bad day, you have to think, oh, my body's not, I can't get my body moving today, so it's not right for me to do some exercise. And I think that's very important to actually sometimes just take a step back and think, yes, my body's not ready today to do some exercise. Just do some stretching, like we're all saying as well, and just get ready for the next day. Because I think it's if you do it when you are tired or when your body's aching, that's when you get injured as well, and you don't want to do that because that just puts you back even more.
Yeah.
I take a slightly different approach. I used to book my gym classes 2 weeks in advance, so I knew I was always booked up to do something. But with COVID, it's kind of shut down the gym, so I had to make adjustments. So what Valerie, my wife, and I do now, we just listen to some YouTube videos, find something on the TV we can watch and follow along with that. And just having her as my buddy, so we encourage each other to do it. So it's always good to do it with somebody else. What do you guys think?
Yeah, the thing with me though is if I open it up to everyone in the family, I have a dog on my lap and I have my two kids trying to fight in a corner because they're getting annoyed with each other. And then it's me trying to keep everyone calm. So I get a bit stressed myself. So I find that quite hard, but I think it's a wonderful idea. But I just wish my kids didn't have to argue at the time when I was trying to do my exercise.
Yes.
But with my husband, I can do that. It's when the kids are at school. We're trying to do that every day at the moment with a bit of circuit training, trying to egg each other on by doing that as well as the walking. I find that helps. Yeah, I find it helps a lot.
Yeah, one of the things I found took the pressure off me. I use a Fitbit, and I used to set a daily step target like a lot of people do, and I get sort of stressed if I didn't hit it. And I did the simple thing of moving the target to monthly. So you can have a couple of days where you're below your target, but you've then got to make them up over other days throughout the month. And I found that
I didn't know you could do that.
Much more effective. So I sort of now have a monthly target, which I find interesting. Keith, you talked about what you've been doing under the lockdown. I mean, given that COVID's clearly going to be with us for some little while, how have people cope with this? You talked about listening to videos and things online. on the TV. Any other thoughts? What have people done to sustain exercise throughout this period, and what advice can they give others for the future?
Who did the body coach? Did anyone do his workouts during lockdown?
Oh,
Joe Wicks?
yes. Joe was fabulous, yes.
Yeah, I did him. I tried to do him most days as well during the lockdown.
Oh, that was hard work.
It was hard work, especially when he's doing all those, what are they called? The burpees. Oh my gosh,
yes.
burpees. Oh gosh, that really was a bit too much for me. But that's for me, is pacing, you see. So then I realised I couldn't do the burpees, so I had to miss them out. But if I did, you just have to work out what you can do and what you can't do.
I think the old school own body weight exercises is so underrated. The guys in World War I and World War II didn't do the star jumps, burpees, press ups, pull ups, sit ups for no reason at all. I think it's, as long as you've got some method of tracking what you're doing, I think all those types of exercises, considering lockdown, are really, really worthwhile.
Yeah.
Just to come back to Neil, I've got a Fitbit. I used to worry about reaching my target steps, but now I don't care. I just know that I'm doing the exercise, I'm doing the minutes, I'm generating all the energy I need. So I don't worry about the Fitbit scores anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, you've certainly got a good approach there, Keith, with you and your wife in partnership. It's excellent. And I think whatever works for everybody, I think that's the key, isn't it?
It is. You've got to enjoy it. If you enjoy the exercise, you're more likely to repeat it, do it more often.
Definitely.
Neil and I found a little toy, didn't we, Neil, over lockdown, which was quite fun. It was I won't mention any brand names for obvious reasons. It was a little headband with an elastic on, with a ball on the end that you could box.
Really?
And we found that really helped with our coordination a lot. And obviously we made a little mini competition out of it to see how many we could do in succession. Obviously I won the competition, but we won't talk about that.
Neil's gone very quiet.
Make no comment.
It's a very cheap piece of apparatus. It's less than a tenner.
Well, it would be if you bought it, Anthony.
You can get it online. I would have had it for free if I could have, Mark.
Has anybody tried? I'm moving on, Anthony. I'm sorry, I'm gonna not have this element. Has anybody tried any specific Parkinson's type exercises? PD Warriors is probably quite a well-known one. Anything like that?
Fighting Fit is the one I've tried.
Tell us more about that, Keith.
It's a local group. It's Pat Salter and Peter Miller.
Is that through Parkinson's UK?
Yes, it's a local group of guys. They are associated with Parkinson's UK, and you can find out more about it from the Parkinson's UK website.
So there's 2 points I wanted to come to. One is if you can have a think about, one is this equipment thing Anthony said then, I'll ask him first. And then the second one, I think Keith talked about measuring earlier, which I think is a good point. If anybody has any other ways of measuring, come back to that in a minute as well.
I'm a great champion of resistance bands. They're easy to pack away for whilst we're all at home and wives considering the house being messy, and you can up lower or increase the resistance of the bands quite easily as well. And there's a plethora of exercises you can do with them, and I think they're quite an underrated little tool.
Yeah, I've used these exercise bands as well. They're quite handy. And I've also got a couple of little dumbbells, not particularly heavy, but just a useful bit of weight resistance, bit of weight training.
And I know it's been done, we're not reinventing the wheel, but anything with any kind of weight in it, a tin of beans, a bottle of water, anything that's hanging around the house is if you want to make excuses, I think it's very easy to do that. But I think the key to it is being a bit creative, being safe, obviously, but being creative and adapting is the key to it, really.
Yeah, one simple one I've found is I leave a little squishy ball on the chair which I watch the TV on. I don't do it every night, but I'll just pick it up a couple of times a week and have a little 20 minutes as I'm watching the TV, opening and closing my hand, which certainly helps me and sort of builds it into my routine.
I have one of those foam rollers. I think they're brilliant as well, which I stretch out on. And if I do have a bit of a injury in my calf or in my hamstring, I find that if I roll out on that, it really helps that area and it stretches it all out. So that's what I would recommend as well.
That's an excellent piece of equipment, even if you haven't got a strain or a pull.
Yeah.
Because obviously we suffer with rigidity, all of us, and aching muscles. It's a good little tool to use. So if you can get into the rhythm of using that on a daily basis to smooth the muscles out, I'd really, really advise that.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. And I also actually just lay on it with my head, just to stretch out my neck in the mornings, and I find that really helps as well.
I was thinking of adding one in for people who like cycling, but find they're starting to fall behind the pack. I've just splashed out on an electric bike. A little bit expensive, but at least it enables me to go out regularly with the cycling team and stay up with them.
Yeah,
I've got a car.
Electric car?
exercising your right foot.
Yeah.
That's why he's got stiff calves.
It's automatic and everything.
I hate you.
Just shout out the window with a loud hailer. Come on.
What, to the cyclists?
Just wave at the ball.
Anybody that'll listen.
You're a bit slow today.
Coming back to this point of measuring success and how we're doing, Keith gave us a good example earlier, and I touched on my monthly target on Fitbit of steps. Anybody else have any thoughts on how they measure? Now, if you get to the end of the week and think I've had a good week, how have you measured that? Any thoughts on that?
For me, it's the routine, the regularity. Have I managed to do my exercises throughout the week? I don't beat myself up for not achieving them, but they're built into my routine, so I've got to do them. So except for the cycling when it gets cold.
So you've got a sort of target for what you're trying to do each day or each week, then?
Yes, number of minutes of exercise. Really, it's quite simple. I don't count steps or anything. Anybody
else want to share how they measure? Or
I personally measure how I feel first against the amount of exercise I do, because I'm quite good at regimented myself to do something, whether it be hitting a target or not. But I think the key is qualifying that you feel better. And if I'm feeling a little bit down the day after I've done some exercises, I know I've overexerted myself. So it's not a rocket science plan, but it's just listening to your body and measuring it that way.
I agree with that as well, completely.
Anthony and I play table tennis.
My cycling is competitive, I guess, because I'm trying to beat the other guys up the hill. And with my electric motor, I can get up the hill faster than most of them.
You cheater. You're a cheater.
Well, you're in a car. You can't talk.
Sorry, that's quite funny.
I wanted to remind everybody that the brain is a muscle too. And I've tried things like Sudoku and similar apps on the phone. And one really good tool, if you will, is learn a new board game to play with your family. I've really enjoyed doing that recently. So get the old brain thinking and working.
Yeah, we could have a new version of Operation, but just for the brain. So we could learn the parts of the brain that are being affected by Parkinson's. I'll trademark that before it goes out to release.
Thanks, Keith. That's a really important point that I think is worth covering. I know in my own part, I'm learning a new language. I'm learning Spanish. Any other thoughts on things people are doing to exercise the brain?
I started to do a lot of mental maths, and I find that helps me.
Yeah.
Trying to remember my multiplication, division, and plus and minusing, and just keeps me going, I think.
As part of a research study, I learned Japanese. I learned about 300 words of Japanese. They put me through an MRI scan before the 1 month of study, and then MRI scan afterwards. I didn't get any results, but hey, I could speak 300 words of Japanese then, not so much now.
How about you, Anthony?
I weirdly actually did Spanish GCSE a couple of years ago in college, Neil.
Yeah.
So I found that a great experience, not only just to keep the brain ticking over, but from a social perspective as well.
Yeah.
It was a GCSE, so it was in night school, so it wasn't with children as such. It was with people from all walks of life, and the social aspect of that was very important at the time, because I was quite affected by my recent diagnosis of Parkinson's, as everybody is, I guess. So estoy aprendiendo español y me encanta también.
Sí, gracias, mi amigo.
De nada.
I think all these exercise classes, when we get together with people with Parkinson's, I think that also is very good for us. It keeps us socially meeting people in the week. It's at the same time we're getting exercise, and I think the two of them are those two factors are very important for us all, exercise and socially. And I think it's an incentive to meet people and also keep us all going exercise-wise. So I find that helps us all very much.
I concur wholeheartedly on that point, because since we've been playing football with Parkinson's for the Wales Parkinson's team, I've improved tenfold, not just physically but emotionally as well. And it's just such a nice platform to be able to discuss with like-minded people. It's critical for us as Parkinson's sufferers.
Very much so. I think it's it feels if you're with someone and you're working on it together, aren't you? You're not on your own there, not either.
Well, I find it difficult to explain what's happening with me to other people, to convey what's going on with my body and my head and my mind. So to discuss it with people that it's happening with as well is paramount for me to adjust and accept it as well.
Mentioned the CAM Care study earlier. What they've discovered is that the loneliness factor affects the rapid degradation of Parkinson's more than anything else. So being lonely is a really negative factor on Parkinson's. So you're totally right. The exercise, the social gathering is really beneficial for all of us.
Before we wrap up, I'd just ask you all to think about one tip you can give people who are listening to this podcast who have Parkinson's that you think it would benefit people to do with exercise. I'll just come to you first, Keith. What would be your one tip for people who maybe are just diagnosed, sort of currently struggling to get an exercise program together?
I think just do it. Find something that you enjoy doing. If you can, get a buddy to do it with, and just become regular. Start slowly, start light if you're going to use some weights, and just build it up. You'll definitely feel the benefit.
Thank you, Keith. How about you, Sarah? What would be your tip?
I would say try and remain positive and don't give up. There's people out there who love you and who need you, and we all need each other, and exercise makes us all feel a lot better and brighter and ready for the day.
Thank you. And finally to you, Anthony.
Just listen to your body. Try and do something. If not everything you want to do that day, just try and complete something, and try and get that natural dopamine forming in your brain through exercise, because it does help.
That's excellent. We'll leave things there. Thank you ever so much for joining me this evening. Thanks for being so open. And for our listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.
That was
Thank
fun.
you.